Hello again everyone, and welcome back to the tutorial. Carol from the Crafty Emporium. Just to do a quick recap, yesterday we covered making the cover of the journal. I got asked a question this morning about using the felt if you were using thicker card. If you're using something like chipboard or mount board, you'll find that those cards themselves, those boards, are too thick, they won't bend. If you're using a card that is, say, 300 GSM, I'm sorry, I don't know what that is in pounds, it will still fold quite nicely. The reason why we're using the felt is it pads out the fabric a little and just makes it a little bit more of a sturdier version of a journal cover. So, as I say, we made the cover yesterday, and this morning we talked about choosing paper and coffee dyeing it, tea dyeing it, avocado dyeing it, and all the rest of it. Excuse me, my voice isn't great today. Excuse me. So, once you've coffee dyed your paper or whatever it is that you're doing, and you've chosen which pages you want to use, we're then going to make what is called a signature. And a signature is a collection of pages which are grouped together. And if you're making a big book, say with a hardback cover, then you would make several signatures to put in the one book. If you have a look at a hardback book yourself, you'll notice, if you have a look from the top, you'll notice the individual signatures. The reason that they do that is so that the papers will lay flatter within your book. Because otherwise, if you just keep folding papers in half and sitting one inside of the other all the time, you will end up with a staggered edge of papers, and it doesn't look very nice, and it won't lay flat. So you make individual signatures to put inside your journal. For this particular one, we're only doing a single signature. Excuse me. So the paper that I'm going to use in mine is a coffee dyed lace piece, a piece of the pink paper that I talked about yesterday, and I've immersed it in water and cooked it in the oven, so it has that nice crinkly sound to it. A piece of tea dyed paper, a piece of colouring paper, an avocado dyed paper, the page from the book, the paper that was cooked on the pizza pan, so it's got the little circles on it, another piece of the pink paper, a piece of the large graph paper, and another piece of tea dyed paper. Now normally I would just go straight ahead and fold these pages in half and sit them one inside of the other excuse me, and trim them down to size. But I want to show you a couple of other little things that you can do. So this first one I'm going to fold in half. The second one I'm also going to fold in half, and I'm just stacking them on top of each other just to the side over here. Here, I'm just going to pause for a minute. I want to show you what I'm going to do with those two that I've just folded, because I want to do something different with this page. So these are the two that I've already folded in half. Excuse me. I am sorry. Okay, when we open up our cover, if we measure from edge to edge, for my book it measures 10 inches. If we just fold the paper in half and put it inside, it's going to extend beyond the cover. So we know that we're going to have to trim it down for it to fit. All right? But I don't want it to sit exactly the same size as the cover itself. I want it to sit slightly inside, partly because it looks neater, and partly because I want to add lace onto the edge of some of the pages later, and the edge will then extend beyond the edge of the cover. So I know that if this is 10 inches, the halfway point is 5. So now I've folded this in half. If I measure from the folded edge out to 5 inches, that will give me the same size as my cover, but I want it smaller, as I've already said. So I'm actually going to cut it down to 4 3/4 inches wide. All right, so it's 1/4 of an inch smaller. The same with the height. I know that the height of my page is 7 1/4. So if I take 1/4 of an inch off that, it's going to measure 7 inches. So I want 4 3/4 by 7 inches. So I just lined the folded edge on the 4 3/4 and trim off the excess. I'm then going to turn this and measure it to 7 inches. Now, before I actually cut, can you see that I've got a blankish space up here and a blankish space down there? If I just cut at 7 inches, I'm going to cut off that blank space, but I'm going to be left with that blank space down there. So I'm actually going to just trim off a little bit there so that I haven't got quite so much of the blank space. And then I'm going to spin it round, measure to the 7 inches that I want, and then I've only got a tiny little bit of blank space at the bottom of this page, and I've got no blank space at the top. So basically I've centralized it a little bit within that measurement. So this one again, 4 3/4 inches. And this one, it doesn't matter about centralising it because it's just a plain piece of paper. And I'm going to cut that to 7 inches. So that's the first 2 pages done, and I can now sit one inside of the other. Right. Now this page, I don't want to just fold it in the centre, because as you can see, you end up cutting off loads of bits of paper, and I just think that that's a little bit of a waste. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my scuttle pal out, and I know that I want my page width to be 4 3/4 inches. So I'm going to measure 4 3/4 inches on here and just lightly do a fold mark there, a crease mark, and then fold this. Now I'm left with all of this overhanging the 4 3/4 inches. If I now, excuse me, from here, 4 3/4 and 4 3/4 is 8, 9 1/2. All right, 4, 8, 9 1/2. Yeah, so 9 1/2 inches. So 4 3/4 and 4 3/4 is 9 1/2. So I've now got this bit now forms a flap. So my page measures 4 3/4 inches, but when I open it up, I've now also got a flap which extends out, so I'm not wasting all of my paper. And then I can cut it to the 7 inches, which is the depth of the paper, or the length of the paper. So now, instead of wasting loads of paper, I've only got that little bit. And as I say, the page opens up, and then you've got a flap that side. That can now also sit inside those pages. The next one is the colouring paper, and I've just ripped this out of the book, so I've now got this horrible edge up here. I'm not going to bother about the flap, I'm just going to fold it in half. Because it's an all over pattern, so I don't need to think about centralising it. Excuse me, so I haven't folded that very well. Let's do that again. There we go. And at this moment in time as well, finger pressing is enough. I don't need my bone folder at this stage to make those creases more permanent. So I'm going to measure 4 3/4 inches, trim off the excess. And then this is the edge that I want cutting off most because it's the raw edge. So I'm going to measure from here 7 inches. And that's another page ready. And that now too can also sit inside of there. Now, excuse me, I'm just going to do the same with this one. I'm going to fold it in half. Cut to 4 3/4. And cut to 7. Sorry, I'm cutting slightly off screen, aren't I? I'm a bit short on space. And then that's another page that I can insert into the centre. This next page, again, I need to think about centralising it because this is more than 7 inches, but I want to make sure that I've got all this part of it in the actual excuse me, in the actual cut in the length of the page. But I know that it's not going to be the right width. I could put it sideways on, but I don't want it sideways on. I want it so that you can see that image in its true format. So this is going to be a narrow page instead of a full width page. And I just need to work out where I need to cut it. So bearing in mind I need to cut it to 7 inches. Can you see I'm going to be struggling a bit to sort of try and fit it all in. So I could start at the top there, just above that title, and the 7 inches takes me down to here, but then it cuts out that box. Or I could eliminate that title, and then that includes the box and more of the image, and it would do the same on the other side as well. So yeah, I'm going to cut off the title. All right, decision made, which is amazing because I'm a typical Libran. I'm rubbish at making up my mind and making decisions. Right, so I've trimmed off my title. I'm going to spin it around now, so I want to measure it to the 7 inches. And trim it off. So there we go. All right. You'll also notice as well that there's a slightly narrow edge there than there is here. So I'm actually just going to trim this edge down just a touch so that it's balanced out a bit that way as well. Yeah, happy with that. Okay, so I can fold that in half now. In fact, I want it folded the other way, do I? I want it. Oh, it doesn't matter really. No, it doesn't matter. Fold that in half. And just sit that inside the centre there. Now, do you remember on the other piece of paper that we did where I measured the 4 3/4 across, 4 3/4 stroke 9.5 across there, and then I had a flap here? This time I'm going to do it this way so that the flap will form a pocket, right? So that we know that the page has got to be 7 inches deep, so the excess beyond the 7 inches will form the flap to make the pocket. But I know that the width, I can just fold this in half and cut it down to the 4 3/4. Excuse me. And then I can get my score pal out again, open up that page, and I know that the length of the page is 7 inches, so I'm just going to go at 7 inches and just put a score mark in there. Fold that up on the score mark, fold my page in half, and I've now got what will eventually be a little pocket or tuck spot. Oh, sorry. Hope you didn't get a headache me doing that. And that will now sit inside of there. Now at the moment all my pages are 7 inches long. There's no reason why you have to have them all the same size. So you could actually cut it shorter, both height wise and width wise. So instead of doing this pink page 4 3/4, I'm actually going to do it to 4 1/4, and I'm going to cut it to 6 1/2. So now I've got a much smaller page, but when I add it inside, it will sit that little bit shorter than all the rest. Why? Because I can, and because it just adds that little bit of extra interest to the journal as you're going through, instead of all the pages being the same. This is all about us being creative. Okay, so the large graph paper, if I measure to 4 3/4 inches, which we know is the width. Oh, look at that. No, it falls halfway. So that falls, there's a little metal wire in here that shows me where it's going to eventually cut, and it falls halfway through the square. If I wanted to, I could just budge it across a little and actually cut on the line of the graph paper, so that it just keeps it all nice and neat and large squares. Because as I say, it doesn't matter if we cut it so that it's a little bit smaller. So I've got a full square here. So if I measure to the 7 inches, this one is going to fall just fractionally inside the square, so I'm going to leave it at that, so it's near enough a full square. And I'm now going to sit that one inside of there, and then the last one I'm just going to fold it in half and do the normal 4 3/4 by 7. Now your measurements might not be the same as mine, because it will all depend on the size of your journal. So if you've made an 8-inch journal, then your pages will need to measure 3 3/4 inches, because we folded it in half. Okay, and we want it slightly smaller. So if I stack that last page in there, so you can see already that the pages are starting to extend beyond each other, because of this center point here where they all meet. If I push those in really tight, which they will be when they're stitched, it starts to even out a little bit more. Okay, so we've done the pages using the paper that we decided on. There are other things that you can add to your signature. So you could add a paper bag, and we all know that a paper bag has got a single opening. So you would then cut off this other end so it has a double opening, and then that would wrap around your page like so, so that when you turn it over, you've got a little, again, bit of added interest that you can insert something into there. As an alternative, you could use a glassine bag, which is sort of a waxy paper bag, and again it has an opening at one end. If you cut off the other end, then you can wrap it round your page, and then you've got a pocket there, and you'll have a pocket there. Alternatively, again, you could have coffee dyed a glassine bag, and you could do the same again. Cut it here, fold it in half, wrap it around your pages. Do you remember I said to you this morning about saving this paper? Well, you could make your own bag with this paper as well. And there's another alternative, which is using an envelope. Now I'm coming up to 20 minutes, so what I would like you to now go off and go and do is to get to this stage where you've put all your pages together, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about adding some of these other little extras and making your own little bags. Okay? Speak to you in a bit. Bye.